Alright, in this video I'm going to be repairing the clear coat on my Mazda 3's bumper. You see there's tons of spots where the clear coat's chipped. I'm assuming that's from the bumper being impacted by a rock or something and then that area being affected, because that doesn't really happen on the metal portions, but in lots of spots on the plastic you could see that the clear coat's worn through. This gets a little bit more involved than just clear coat, because I find there's not a whole lot of paint on this thing, but you're going to see that in a second. I do give it a bit of a spray with some touch-up paint in a couple spots, so I ended up spending 20 bucks more on some paint, but I'm going to do the entirety of the bumper in one shot here, so we'll get to this. The first thing I'm doing, sort of off camera, kind of sprayed it down and wiped the car down, so I'm going to take some 400 grit and just do the areas that are actually damaged, sort of around the edges. You can see that right there it's already gone right down to primer. So it went there really fast, and even some of the ones where I don't use the 400 grit, it goes right to primer really fast, even with just an 800 grit. So I'm assuming the paint on this thing is really thin. Maybe there's only one coat of paint on the primer and then a coat of clear, I don't know, but you can see that it's very white there. So if I clear coated that, it would look bad. It would look white, which is not what I want. So I do go and get some spray. Anyway, I do like I said, just the damaged spots with the 400. Then I go to a 600 grit, and I'm using the spray bottle the whole time, so it's all wet sanding. And for the 600 grit, I do the entirety of the bumper, so I don't just do the front portion, I also go around to the sides and right back to the wheel well. So the entirety of the bumper is getting done here at once. It was a little bit of a pain to work around the lights and then some of the contours around those fake air dams. That was a bit of a pain too, but overall not too bad. Once I did the 600, just did the exact same thing again with 800 grit. All of it's wet sanding, and you can see on some of those other spots that it's also burnt through the paint with the sandpaper there. So it does involve a little bit of spray paint as well. And then I'm going to the 1500 grit, and the 1500 is the last level of sanding I do before doing a little bit of painting and then getting onto the clear coat. And once I've sanded the entirety of the front bumper, I'm just going to come around with the hose and get all of the sanding scum off there. There's like clear coat kind of running down the car sort of thing, so I got all that off. We don't want that on the car. And then the last thing I'm going to do before using the spray cans is to use this Duplicolor cleaner, and it's going to get anything that would prevent the paint or clear coat from adhering to the surface off of the car. So here's a bit of a close-up. Like I said, almost in all the spots, even if I didn't use the 400 grit, it burnt right through the paint and into the primer, like almost instantly, all of them. So not too impressed. My Nissan was much more robust and it didn't go straight down to primer like this vehicle did. Anyway, I got this Duplicolor 38R, which is specific for my Mazda, year, color, and make and model. So you do have to get the right kind for your car. I find it's a little bit runny. I do 2 coats of this, and I'm really just doing the front section around the emblem. So initially I just hit up these spots where there was actually damage, and then I come over after taping the Mazda emblem and I just sort of generally spray the frontage. I don't do the sides, I don't do the air dam at the bottom, none of that stuff. Overall, I find that this paint from Duplicolor turned out to be a really good match. And I guess the only other thing I do, which is sort of off camera, is once this dries for about 20 minutes, I just take some 800 grit sandpaper really lightly, sand the spray painted area a little bit, and then I go over it one more time. So I painted it twice with the spray paint, and I did sand it lightly in between coats, and I only did that area sort of around that Mazda badging. While the paint was drying after spray painting it, I did a whole bunch of taping and took some of the newspapers that get delivered to my house for some reason and jammed those all over the place. And now I'm just using the clear coat. I left the clear coat in fairly hot water, not boiling water, it's just tap water, but as hot as it'll get. And then I'm going to come over and do 3 coats with the clear coat. So not too fancy with the clear coat, just sort of a light back and forth, keeping the can moving, making sure that I don't get any runs or any major buildup of the clear coat while I'm doing it. Pretty straightforward. And in between coats for the clear coat, they recommend 10 minutes. It's getting a little bit colder out. It's still pretty warm, but I do give it about 20 minutes in between coats. On the second coat, I decided to put on the P100 mask. Initially, I wasn't going to, but because it's a super windy day out, which always seems to be the case when I'm trying to paint something, there was some blowback and I was kind of breathing it. So after the first coat, I decided to change course and throw on the mask for the rest of it. But same deal as the first coat. Keep the can moving, light spray, and make sure I don't get any runs. And then the third coat is my final coat. I actually got this can of clear coat for my Nissan, so it's already been sort of used. So I actually only got three coats out of it. If it was a brand new can, it would have easily done 4 coats on the front bumper. So I would have normally done 3 light coats and then 1 fairly heavy coat, but in this case I did 2 light coats, and then the last coat is basically the entire can, which is a pretty heavy coat across the entire bumper actually. And then once this coat's done, I leave it for 3 days. So I finished that on a Sunday, and I think I came back to this on Thursday-ish, something like that. Anyway, I'm gonna go straight back to wet sanding the clear coat, and I'm gonna use 2000 grit and then 3000 grit. Obviously keeping the vehicle wet, keeping the sandpaper wet, and just keeping an eye out for any runs in the clear coat that might need a little bit extra sanding. I didn't really see any problems with the clear coat, so it was mainly just buffing it down and smoothing it out. I didn't notice too much of an orange peel texture in the clear coat either, so that really didn't seem to be a problem. It was mainly, like I said, mainly just smoothing everything out. So after I sanded it, I sprayed it with water. I did that off camera and just sort of wiped it down. And then I'm going to use this Meguiar's cutting compound and just buff that into the freshly sanded clear coat. And I've used this tool on a whole bunch of projects now, and it's pretty efficient for a DIYer to do some basic cutting and polishing with. And then after I put on the Meguiar's compound, just take a microfiber cloth and wipe it off. Then I'm going to use the Meguiar's polishing compound. I'm just leaving the camera in the garage because it's starting to rain a little bit. And same deal, once you put the polishing compound on, you got to wipe it off between sections. And then the last thing I'm going to do is put on a Meguiar's wax, let the wax sit for 10-15 minutes, and then again come around with a microfiber cloth and wipe it off. And that's pretty much it. So that's what it looks like, I guess. It's not perfect. It looks way better. I would give it maybe a 7 out of 10. I know where the spots are, where the clear coat was damaged, and you can see them if you get in close and personal, but I mean overall it looks way better, and it's going to keep it from chipping and peeling. Anyway, thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.